Now, to create and populate a repository with some existing code, what you'll do is first you can log into GitHub. Here in the repositories tab, you'll see a new button in your core dashboard. There'll be usually there's buttons rolling all over here. I don't see one here. Let's go back to the dashboard. There we go. And you can see there's a new button here, as well as a button to create a repository here. So there's various locations you can find. In this particular case, we'll just go ahead and click on this button. And we want to create a new repository. This repository, I'll call it Queens. And what we're going to do is this is going to be here. I've got a solver for the 8 queens problem. And so it's an algorithm or code that I wrote to handle that particular problem. We'll make this public. That's fine. We'll go ahead and add a README file. It's a Visual Studio project, so I don't want to import all kinds of Visual Studio temporary files. So we can automatically exclude those. Basically what you're doing is you're telling GitHub when I want to do a push, I want to ignore a certain series of files that obviously don't add anything to the project. They're not source code or anything. So I want to go ahead and just simply not include those when we generate our repository and import the data back and forth. So I'll go ahead and create this repository. There's no licensing either, by the way. So here is my initial repository. So I've got my ignore list, and then I've got a little README file that I've created. So now I have a repository ready to go. The next step is once I have this created, I need to actually then sort of link it to my actual repository, the one on my hard drive, and then I can begin the process of committing the project up into GitHub. So probably the first thing I want to do is go ahead and copy this URL, because we'll need this a little bit later, and then run Git. So we're going to use our trusty Git application to go ahead and get us all the way. So we'll go ahead and pop this here. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and navigate to my project folder. You'll see in here I've got a folder called 8 Queens, and this folder will then we'll use this as our GitHub repository folder. So we'll go ahead and run this. We want to go to another drive. So we'll go d:/cs admin GitHub 8 Queens. Okay, and I think I need the uppercase D. So let's go ahead and run that again. I also misspelled 8. There we go. Better. Okay, there we go. All right, so now we're in our drive and location we need. So if you recall from other videos, we need to initialize our Git here. So we'll create sort of a Git folder. Once again, as you can see right now, there's nothing here, but I'll go ahead and init this. So we do git init. Okay, we have an empty repository, and what it'll do is it'll now set up our Git. So there's our Git and the various folders that we need here to actually do version control. All right, and then we want to go ahead and add our connection. So in this case, we'll use the remote command. So we type git remote add origin, and the origin is going to be that folder or that URL we copied right here. All right, so we click on this. All right, and now if we're interested, we want to see what our status happens to be, we can do git status. Okay, and we can see now we've got a bunch of files in here. One thing I forgot to do is actually show the remote itself. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and check and see how our remote is essentially set up. So we say git remote -v. Okay, and you can see here that we now have the ability to grab or fetch, and also the ability to push data back and forth. So we're ready. We're set up now to essentially connect and add all these files. All right, so you can see right now with our status, we have all these files that need to be added to our project. And in order to do that, then we're going to want to go ahead and first add our local files to our Git repository. So we do git add and then period. Period simply means add everything in the current folder. So we run this, hit our period, and then let the thing go do its stuff. Okay, now, assuming everything is okay, we can start our commit. So remember, what we're going to do first is we're going to commit to our local hard drive. Once we have everything set up the way we want, we'll then go ahead and push it to our GitHub repository. So we'll commit to the local drive first. So we use that using the git commit command. Commit -m, we'll leave a message here. We'll call this initial commit. Okay, so this gets all of the various libraries and things that I need. All right, now one thing I want to do to kind of stay consistent with GitHub, so I'm going to go ahead and rename this branch. So I'm going to call this, instead of right now it's master, let's just call it main. So we're going to call this git branch -m main. And then you'll see now that master has changed to main. So I think now we're consistent with GitHub. And now we want to do a pull. So what's going to happen is if you look in GitHub, we have the git ignore and the readme here. So I'm going to go and pull those down, and that will then allow me to essentially sync up the repository, at least the files in the repository in GitHub, with the files here. Otherwise, it's not going to allow us to do a push because it's got some sort of things which are not properly synced. So let's go ahead and grab those files. And the command we can use is a pull. So we'll do git pull. And what we want to do here is we're going to say from the origin, and that's up in GitHub, call it main. And then we're going to use this flag allow unrelated history. So it's just simply going to pull these files down and not check to see if there are any versions currently in on our hard drive. So related histories. Okay, and so we've got our files. Now if you go back here, interestingly enough, we get this pop-up. So this is a Visual Studio Code, and in this particular pop-up, it's simply going to ask us for some sort of an explanation. So what we want to do is, of course, I don't really need this data here. We'll just say initial commit or initial pull. How's that? Then we simply save it and close this, and then it'll push it in. So now we have, assuming everything is working right, this should all be completely set up and ready to go. And we can quickly check here. So if we go to here, you can now see we've got our README file. There's our ignore file and our git. So everything looks like it's going to work. So the next thing to do is, now that we have all our files, we simply want to push these files. So we can go ahead and do that. So we'll go ahead and run a push. So we'll say git push -u, that's a small u, origin main. All right, and we'll see what happens. And oh gosh, we got a fatal error. So here's the problem. Okay, I see here that my account, my normal Git account, is this one. However, the Git account, I'm looking up here, NNUCS, that's a different email account. So in another video, I'll show you how to pull a credential from that account so you can use it. And because what normally happens is everybody wants to share a GitHub repository, and so they can simply emulate that person. The way to do that is to get an access token that essentially has that particular account in it. And so in order for us to, in essence, push this to a different GitHub account, we need to supply that access token. So we actually have to set essentially the URL, and it looks kind of like this. So here is our set command. It's git remote set URL origin, and I'll give you a quick look-see, and then I'll set mine. So go here and paste, and so you can see what's going on here is I'm going to add a token which I can get from GitHub that has the particular account token to it. And then you can see here new username, repo name, and this is going to be whatever this is here. You can see now the NNUCS Queens is the username and repo name. So I supply that information, and I'm going to get the get. So we'll do that, and I'll come back in just a minute. Okay, so we've set the account, and then we'll try to push again. All right, so we go ahead and run the push, and we get results similar to this probably. And then if you want to check, you can go back to GitHub and take a look and see all of the new files that got imported into your repository. So that's how you can create and import a new repository in GitHub.